In the previous lecture, I shared with you why natural selection failed to grant us immortality and the resulting fear of death. In conclusion, I proposed the idea of embracing life by accepting death, because without knowledge of death, how can we truly appreciate life? In this lecture, I will analyze the levels of death and the significance of death to human civilization from a psychological perspective. Two types of death, physical and spiritual. The best research subjects for studying human cognition of death are children. Why is this so? This is because their budding and developing concepts of life and death can help us understand how adult concepts of death are formed. Psychological research has found that children as young as 4 to 6 years old begin to associate human organs with psychological and physiological functions. For example, lungs are for speaking, the stomach is for eating, and the heart sustains life. By the age of 7, children can understand that the destruction of bodily functions leads to death. At this point, they begin to form the concept of death, believing that death is not a temporary behavior like sleeping, but the opposite of life. Interestingly, however, children's concept of death is only related to physical death, not spiritual death. Professor White, a psychologist, conducted an interesting experiment that clearly demonstrated this point. Professor White told a story to kindergarten children about a crocodile eating a mouse. After showing pictures of the mouse being eaten, he did two things. First, he asked the children some questions about the physical aspects of the mouse, such as, since the mouse is dead, does it still need to go to the bathroom? Can it still hear? Then, he asked some questions about the mouse's spiritual aspects, such as, since the mouse is dead, will it still be hungry? Will it hate the crocodile? Will it want to go home? When children were asked about physical aspects, as I mentioned earlier, they could understand the impact of death on the body. For example, the dead mouse no longer needs to go to the bathroom, its ears can no longer hear, and its brain no longer works. That is to say, children believe that the mouse's body is dead. But when asked about the mouse's spiritual aspects, most children believed that they would continue to exist. The dead mouse can feel hunger, have emotions, and desires, which means that the mouse's soul is not extinguished. In short, children believe that only the body dies, not the spirit. Moreover, this concept does not change as children grow older. On the contrary, the concept of the body is perishable, but the soul is immortal has always been preserved in the adult concept of death, becoming our concept of death. Therefore, for humans, death has two meanings, one is physical death, and the other is spiritual death. From the earliest literary work in human history, Gilgamesh, the protagonist's pursuit of the immortal herb reflects the ancient people's dream of physical and spiritual immortality. Unfortunately, the pursuit of physical immortality is just a foolish fantasy. Therefore, humans have to settle for the fact that the body dies, but the spirit lives on. Two religious views of time, circular versus linear. The first human city in human society was born in Çatalhöyük, Turkey, about 7,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found that the residents of Çatalhöyük put their deceased family members in baskets or rolled them in grass mats and buried them under stoves, beds, or floors. When residents moved, they would dig up their loved ones' remains and take them with them. Respect for the dead and intimacy with the dead were already the core of the life and culture of Çatalhöyük residents 9,000 years ago. Today, in Eastern culture, the tablets enshrined in ancestral halls are a tribute to ancestors, while Western churches have set up heaven as the destination for ancestral souls. Behind this ancestor worship is the immortality of the soul that humans use to combat the fear of death. Since the soul is immortal, the question that follows is, where does the soul go after the body dies? After countless generations of careful polishing, religions that can perfectly answer this question have emerged. Currently, there are about 50 to 100 religions in the world, and religions like Christianity have many branches. However, all religions can be divided into two categories based on their views of time. Religions represented by Buddhism believe that the movement of time is circular. It is like the rotation of the four seasons and the alternation of day and night, repeating itself. Therefore, in Buddhism, everything that happens in this life is the fruit of past actions, and this life's actions will become the cause of future events, and so on. Therefore, life or death is only the appearance and end of the body, and the soul is immortal in the endless cycle. Religions represented by Christianity believe that time has a beginning and moves toward an endpoint, and is linear. In Christianity, the entire universe's time is divided into three periods: before creation, from creation to the day of judgment, and after the day of judgment, like before birth, from birth to death, and after death. Therefore, Christianity's linear view of time actually simulates a person's life, only on a larger scale. Therefore, in Christianity, the body returns to dust after death, and the soul returns to heaven, back to God's embrace. However, psychologist Steven Pinker reminds us that we cannot find comfort in assumptions we cannot accept. That is to say, a hungry person will not stop being hungry just because he believes he has just eaten a big meal. Only when people are convinced that there is an afterlife or heaven after this life, can religion bring comfort and alleviate the anxiety of death. In fact, nearly half of the world's population are staunch atheists or skeptical of religion. So, how should they face the anxiety of death?